Hi everyone. I'm doing a graphic tutorial as requested by Phoenix or the Flame. It's about 1 in the morning and I've been studying all day, so I'm sorry if this is a little poorly made, but I'm gonna do my best. Okay, so I've just selected an image off of Pinterest. And I don't really have a plan, but let's just say I'm gonna do some sort of scenery thing for the Hogwarts houses, and I've selected this one for Gryffindor. Let's just say that's my plan. And then I've opened it up in my program called GIMP. That's what I use to make my edits, GIMP. You can download it online for free. It's a really good program, pretty easy to use. Hopefully with this tutorial, you'll kind of get a feel how to do this. Also, I do want to say, if you are going to follow this step by step, please don't post your final product on Tumblr because, it's kind of my layout, my thing. And if I do see it, I'll know and I'll call you out on it. And if you deny it, then I have this video as proof. Okay, just wanted to get that out of the way. So, before I actually get into editing the photo, I'm going to just talk about fonts quickly. And so I get fonts off of a site called defont.com. So that's right there. And as you can see, they just have like a really wide selection of fonts, all of these different things. If you want to make edits, I really recommend looking into downloading fonts. They're for free, wide selection. Like I said, you can get pretty much anything you want. It's all up to you. I just like having a really wide selection so I can make different things. So the reason I said that is because the font I'm going to be using, which is this one right here, Generica, that's a downloaded font. So, I don't want you looking for it. So first things first, to add text in your image, basically with this program you can click anywhere you want it. So like if you wanted it down here, you can click there. You can always adjust it later, but let's just say I want it up here, and let's just do something like that. Okay, so now as you can see, it's kind of not really aligned, but like it's not like a text box in like Microsoft Word or something where you can drag it. If you try to drag it, you just select the text. So if you want it to be right or left more, what you're going to do is you're going to take these edges and you're going to just click and drag. And then I want my thing to be centered, so I'm going to actually drag them both so they're an equal length, so it'll be perfectly centered. If you wanted it off-centered, then you can do that. And then to move this up or down, like if you want this a bit farther up, you're going to click and drag this one, the top one, and go up and then down. And if it ever gets cut off, then you just readjust it with the bottom one. So that's how you do that. I want it to be up so it's not going to blend in with that right there. I've selected my font. To do that, you just go through here, and then all of the fonts that you have on your computer are in here. You can look through them. They show you a nice example. Size of my font, pretty self-explanatory. The alignment is right here, so left, right, centered. And then the letter spacing is right here. So as you can see, that'll make it more condensed or less condensed. It's really up to you, just however much you want it spaced. For the thing that I'm doing, I probably wanted a little more space because I'm giving you a specific example for something that I've made. So let's just say I want it really spaced out. Okay. Next thing is I'm going to make an outline. So I'm going to click on the text over here in the layer, layer toolbox, and then I'm going to right click on it, go alpha to selection, and see now you can see that the text itself is selected. And because of that, I'm going to go over here again, right click again, new layer, and then we're just going to title it something. You can title it whatever, I'm just being lazy. And then you're going to drag it behind this because the outline is going to be behind the white text. You don't want it to be in front. And then right click basically anywhere on the image, select, grow. And what this is doing, it's just growing that selection by however many pixels. I suggest for a thin font like this, only growing it by 1. Because if you do a little more, like the color kind of over dominates, and I don't really like that look. And then another thing I like to do is right click again, select feather, and I just usually do this by about 2 pixels. And what feather does, it just kind of gives it like a nice, more like blended look, kind of like subtle. And then I'm going to fill, so you're going to click on this, and then I'm going to make it gray because gray is like a neutral color. I think it works best. And I know it's really thin, it's hard to see. You're just going to click within there. And then right click, select, none. So now, as you can see, if I make this layer invisible, you can see a bit of a difference, but I'm not going to leave this gray. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up here to where it says mode, and this is what kind of changed the effects of the layer. I'm going to click on the little arrow, I'm going to go down to burn, and now you can see that nice like kind of blendy effect that it leaves. there's other things that you can play around for text like this, like that's thin and kind of hard to see. Most of the other ones don't really show up. You can kind of see that for yourself. And then the other thing I'm going to do to affect this text right here is go over to the outline layer, right click, alpha selection again, but we're not going to create a new layer. This time we're going to just go over here, right click again. We're going to go down to filters, light and shadow, and drop shadow. And so I'm going to just make this text pop a little more. So I tend to leave these on their default settings because I always think it looks nice, but I uncheck this box because what that does is it makes the layer that this shadow is going to be on, it kind of like readjusts it so it's bigger than the rest of the canvas, and I just don't like dealing with that. And then right click, select none. Drag this behind. So now you can see that there's kind of like a nice shadow that makes it pop out if you're ever worried about it not showing up. And then to change the opacity of something, if you want it to be in full force or completely invisible. So if I don't want this drop shadow at all for some reason, just drag it all the way there. And if I want it 100%, then I just drag it to 100. Just play around with that. It's really up to you because like for every image, it's going to be different to how much you want it to be shown. I like leaving my shadows around like 70-something% usually because it's just like a nice thing, especially when it's like a bright image, you want it to pop out more. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to add more text. I'm not going to explain it as much this time, although I will explain how I'm doing it. So what Amy requested for me to do was she wanted me to do something that I had done in another edit, and I'm just redoing this completely over instead of just showing you the image and trying to explain it. So as you can see, I've turned it back to white, and then I'm going to put my text here. And so I did this thing where I made, I don't remember the word, when you make like something like for each letter in a word you put other letters. It's not like an anagram, it's like something else, acronym, I don't know. But so, and I did it down with this effect of like going down. And so basically in order to get this effect, I just did the text box. I typed a letter, so I did, you know, like that, and then enter, that, enter, that, enter. So you kind of know how that works, right? Delete. Okay. So this is all just one text box right here. It just goes straight down. And then the thing I'm going to show you is if I want these letters to be closer together, so that like the spacing is wider, or if I want it to be farther apart, you're not going to do the letter spacing. What you're going to do is you're going to do this spacing. And what this does, it affects like how wide the length is between each enter. So if I make this negative, it's going to, you know, decrease that space. And then if I want to make it wider, which I don't for something like this, then I go like that. So let's say I want it to be closer together. I'm also going to change the font face. I'm going to use something called, I think, Cool. Yeah. And then I'm going to change the font size because this isn't the main, I mean, I guess it's kind of the main part of the show. And then I'm also going to adjust the spacing. So see, I'm just kind of playing around with the settings as I'm going. Usually when you're making an edit, you don't necessarily have everything planned out. Like you'll have like an idea in your head. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing that I did before. Right click, alpha to selection, right click, new layer, and then painful text. Drag behind, right click, select, grow, 1 pixel. I'm not going to feather it this time. Fill, select none, and then burn. Okay, so that's basically you're going to do that with the rest of these. I just looked up like adjectives that for each letter, and the edit that I did before, I just picked grateful because that was the first word that came to my head with the G. And so you just do that for all of these. Something that's possible I like to do is I like making this layer invisible, this text, and seeing if that looks kind of cool. This is basically all it's showing now is that outline that we made, but instead of having the white around it, it's just that. And it has that burned effect. See, so if I were to use one of these different settings, it's practically invisible because it's just through a font and it's like really dark. So like play around with these. You never know what you're going to get. With something like font, it's going to be weird, but something I will show you that you can do with the image. So moving on from text, is how to kind of get a different effect to the image itself. So let's say I want to kind of incorporate more colors into this image rather than what's just presented. So right click here, new layer. I'm not alpha to selecting anything because it doesn't need to be selected. And then I'm just going to say, let's call this color layer. And I'm going to make sure that this thing right here, this layer, is actually going to be like above all the text, because I don't really know how it's going to look if it's above everything. And so I'm going to go to gradient, and what this does is a blend tool. So I'm going to pick two colors. So let's say I want this image to have a bit more blue and a bit more red. Actually, wait, let's make this red and gold because it's for Gryffindor. So let's do that. I have no idea how this is going to look, but we're just going to do this. So then make sure that this layer is selected, the color layer, the one that that's blank right now. You know, if you take it away, there's no difference. It's just a transparent layer right now. You're going to take your gradient tool, select your little mouse, start at the top corner, and then just drag in a diagonal line right down. So see, it gives this a gradient. Now you can do it, I'm Control-Zing, you can do it straight across. See, it's basically just giving you a nice gradient. So let's just say I want it to be diagonal. You can play around however you want. If you want it to be completely vertical, it's up to you. So then click on this and then again go here. I usually like to use something like overlay for things like this, and then see, that kind of gives it like a nice look. And then if I think that it's kind of affecting the way I want the font to look, just drag it, move it down so it's beneath all the font, so the font has like a perfect whiteness, but see, it doesn't really actually affect it all that much. And then if you want to see how it looks without that, see, I kind of like that look. It gives it like much more of a kind of cool feeling to it. That's something that you can do. And see, for this one, you can play around with these settings a lot more, like grain merge. That makes it a little, you know, harsher. You don't really want to have an edit that looks like that. Hard light, you know, these things like that. Burn for this. See, burn doesn't work as well for a bunch of color like this compared to your font. I really like how overlay looks. And then you can change the opacity. See, you know, now it's like almost invisible. It's like it's not even there. Really just play around with these things because, like I said, every edit is going to be different. Every edit, you want it to be different from another one. You know, you don't want it to always be the same. But that's pretty much the basics that I use in most of my edits for GIMP. You can do a bunch of different things. There's a lot of these different tools, but for an image like this one, I mean, when you're starting making edits, you want to keep it simple. You know, you want to do stuff like this, and you know, play around, see if you like want this to have a shadow. Then you can just play around with that, because seriously, anything goes, and you can just Control-Z, and that basically is just undoing things, and then you can redo things. Basically, it's entirely up to you when you're making an edit. I'm just saying keep it simple at first. I like how the shadow looks with that, but really just play around with things. Try to get familiar with the program, because there's things like scaling tools, which is when, you know, you have an image and you just want to make it smaller, you want to kind of like adjust it. So let's say I want this text to be smaller, and so it's just going to say scale. That didn't actually affect the text, so that was a problem. But let's just say I want the image to be smaller. So see, I'm just showing you this as an example, and then see, now you can see that this is like really tiny. I've like basically just changed scale, but if I don't have like how it looks, just Control-Z. So there's a lot of different things to play around with, but for the most part, when you're starting off, just kind of get a feel for how to, you know, make the image look pretty, how to make fonts, stuff like that. I'm gonna probably link some tutorials that I've used if I can find like pretty straightforward ones, but like I said, GIMP is pretty easy to figure out. Just start off simple, do stuff like this to get just a feel for it, you know, before you actually try to get into like making like really complicated edits, because you can't really do that unless you understand like how everything works. But hopefully this was helpful. I'm sorry I didn't do like all of the words for this. I just figured one would be enough. Yeah, hopefully this isn't like incoherent. Like I said, it's like 1 in the morning and it's finals week, and I'm kind of just I'm a little out there right now. But yeah, good luck with edits, and I guess have a nice day. Yeah. Okay, bye. One more quick thing. In order to save and export this file, you're going to just save it however you want to save it, so that way you have a nice copy. So that way if you want to edit again, do that. And then to export it, you're going to export it. I like saving my things as PNG, then just export it, so that way it'll actually be that. I keep those settings default. And then now you can use it. Okay, now goodbye. Good night. Yes.